Previously on EarleWrites.
It's January 2023. New start. Alright, well, it's not London Fashion Week. Ironing is an absolute nightmare on a boat. Why would you do it? It's a massive waste of time. Ow!
So do you think you were going to get to see the goods? Don't be bloody naughty.
And now, on with the show.
Wow, what a bloody day it's been. It's been productive in the sense of cleaning out the boat, getting rid of a load of rubbish, sorting out room by room, which is what I'd like to do for January, to put myself in the best stead to be as productive as possible. So you've seen a little bit how I genuinely live on the boat. Like I say, I always like to give a realistic account. I don't want to show you a false account where everything's beautiful and I keep going on about how lovely and tranquil things are, because it's a small space and I've got a lot of stuff. And so I would like to celebrate the end of a successful day with a little bit of wine. Shall we amend that statement? There's no such thing as a little bit. There we go. I've got this fantastic book called Crime on the Canals by Anthony Poulton Smith. It's absolutely fantastic. Inside are numerous cases that have happened in the canals, from theft to murder to speeding to arguing. And the crimes here are from the 1830s to the 1950s, 1960s. But I'd like to read to you the case from 1873 of Elizabeth Lowke. Elizabeth Lowke died in October 1873 at the tender age of 7. She had been aboard a vessel under boatman Frederick Mussen, accompanied by Anna Hillman. Brought to Stafford County in December, the sad story of this young girl's death unfolded. Aldersley Junction opened in 1772 and allowed movement between the Birmingham Canal network and the Staffordshire and Worcestershire Canal. Lying at the bottom of a flight known as the Wolverhampton 21 Locks, it had been a vitally important link in the network. On 30th of October 1873, one of the many boats arrived and moored up. As it was quite late in the day, Frederick Mussen wasted no time in unhitching the horse and walking it around to the stables, where he groomed and fed the animal himself. The late arrival was something of an indication of the distance travelled that day, and the horse was rewarded for its hard work. Meanwhile, dinner was being prepared by Anna Hillman. Much is said about the overcrowding on these boats. We hear of families numbering double figures living in the confines of a tiny cabin. This is quite untrue, although boats may have housed as many as 6, 2 adults and 4 children, assuming they were young enough. However, until boatmen were paid a decent wage to enable their families to rent a house, they were forced to live in cramped conditions. When numbers became too great, it was commonplace to ask other boatmen for help. These children were expected to pay for their keep themselves by working on the boat. Sadly, many were treated badly. Several craft were moored up for the night at Aldersley, and after eating, the boatmen and women began to filter away to a nearby public house. This included Mussen and Hillman, leaving Elizabeth Lowke alone on the boat. The girl's appearance had been noted by a number of other boaters. Wearing only an ill-fitting skirt, she appeared emaciated and sickly. When Hillman returned to the boat at around 8 p.m, accompanied by a neighbouring boatman called Tom Mander, they noticed an unpleasant smell coming from the boat, which Hillman blamed on the girl. To Mander's distress, Hillman began to beat and whip the poor girl, who was now wearing night attire, as she lay on the floor, having soiled herself. Next, she dragged Elizabeth from the boat by her hair and, ignoring Mander's pleas for her to stop, yelled how "the little shit is always doing it." By the time Mander moved away, Hillman had removed the child's clothing and had left her standing naked. Tom Mander and his family listened to her heartbreaking sobbing until they felt like they had to intervene. Mary Mander, Tom's mother, appealed for mercy and Hillman agreed, but said she could not speak for Fred, who had threatened to kill her and toss her into the cut on several occasions. Mrs. Mander helped to clean the soiled child and put her to bed, asking she not tell Mussen what had happened. When Mussen returned, as ever the worse for drink, he hit Elizabeth hard with the stock of his whip and fell straight into bed and into a deep sleep. It's not the sort of nighttime story I should be telling. The next morning, they found the girl still in her bed and discovered she was cold to the touch. Elizabeth Lowke's miserable existence had ended the previous night. Realising they should report this, Anna Hillman encouraged Mussen to summon assistance. He found an official from the company offices, Charles Millington, and said they had found her dead as they were making ready to leave. A likely story. Mr. Millington inquired as to how the bruising around her eye happened, but they told him it had been the result of a fall in the cabin. Realising this needed the authorities, both men left to find a doctor and a policeman. When P.C. Clayton and Sergeant Billett returned with Millington just over an hour later, the clerk noticed the corpse had been washed and evidence of bruising was all over the frail figure. Hillman told the police the bruises were the result of being trodden on by the horse. Officers also discovered an apron, covered in blood, hidden in the cabin. Mr. John Cook, surgeon, examined the body and his subsequent evidence showed the bruising could never come from the hooves of a horse. However, they were consistent with the beating from the stock of a whip, which they had been found aboard the boat. Examinations revealed numerous cuts and bruises, although the internal organs were healthy. Cause of death had been a layer of coagulated blood at the side of her head, which would initially have made the deceased comatose, with death following within a few hours. In his opinion, the fatal blow had been delivered inside the last 24 hours. After the evidence had been produced in court on the 8th of December, the prosecution spoke of how Elizabeth had been a healthy child when her father had asked the accused to take care of his daughter. He went on to speak of witnesses seeing Mussen strike the girl with the stock of his whip on a number of occasions. He conceded the man probably had no intention of killing her, but kill her he most certainly did. The defence counsel argued that there had been no evidence to suggest the accused had done anything more than scold a clearly difficult child. Indeed, this was undoubtedly the main reason Mr. Lowke had rid himself of the burden of raising her. In their defence, he maintained their only crime had been a mistaken idea of what constituted punishment for a child who persisted in repeatedly fouling the cramped living quarters when she was quite capable of using the toilet facilities available. Following the judge's summoning up, paying particular attention to the difference between murder and manslaughter, the jury retired for just 30 minutes before delivering a verdict of guilty on a charge of manslaughter. Jurors were also keen to criticise the father for his awful choice of care, stating he was not entirely blameless in this sad case. Both seemed relieved the verdict had not been murder, which would have carried a death sentence, but their freedom was effectively ended by the sentence of 20 years for each. While Mussen had undoubtedly delivered the fatal blow, the judge considered Hillman equally to blame, as she had promised Mrs. Mander should cease the beatings. And that's Crime on the Canals by Anthony Poulton Smith. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, subscribe and leave a little comment if you like. If you'd doubly like to support this very strange adventure of living on a 1920s boat, you can also join as a patron, you can follow on Instagram, and I even have an option where you can tip for a cup of tea if you so wish. During the winter, the tip for a cup of tea will go on tea bags, but it will also go on coal and treats for Leela. Thank you so much for your love and support. I've really been enjoying doing these videos so far, and I've only got 5 weeks left until the history tour begins. At the moment I'm in Warwickshire and stuff is happening. So from me and Charlie, all the best. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.